Hello, and welcome to the Venue Coach Blueprint for Owners. I'm Kyle Labar. This podcast is all about helping you fill your wedding venue with more bookings, earn more from each one, and keep your customers happy for a long time. We'll also talk about some tough times and big lessons that I've learned along the way. Let's dive in together and make your venue the best spot for weddings. Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of the Venue Coach. And in today's episode, I wanted to talk about how we went about getting our second venue and the lessons that we learned from that, and actually also the lessons that we learned from the first one, so that if you're looking for a venue or if you're looking for your second one or whatever, you can keep these things in mind and avoid some of the mistakes that we made and do a better deal. And so I'll start with the first one. The biggest thing in that was that we were starting with no direct experience. And so it was really hard to convince lenders to give us the money. And so we had to basically find a lender that was willing to do it, but they were not easy to work with. So there's a lot of on the front end, they were asking for documents over and over and over again that we had sent them. And then on the back end, they basically, we had worked it out because the venue that we were buying only had like 6 events that we took over. And so it's basically zero. So we worked it out that we could get working capital as well as furniture, fixtures, and equipment, or FF&E. And then every time we went to request it, it was just pulling teeth to get them to pay it out. And then the other piece of it was that we had worked it in that they would fund the chapel build, but because this lender was based in another state, they were asking for all sorts of building inspections and things that just didn't exist for us here in Texas. And so they just wouldn't do it. And it then when it came time, like later, we had the plans and we had all this and we were ready according to what they wanted. Then they were asking us to again re-verify all of the lending documents and all of the taxes and all this stuff again, even though we had done it just a few months prior. And so that was just really a big headache. So if you're in a position, if you're coming into this new and you don't have any direct experience, then it might be a good idea, and these are just ideas, but it might be a good idea to find someone to partner with who does have direct experience, or it could be that you might want to have more cash up front to work the deal. And so if you have those, then you get better lenders who are more willing to look at you. And so we came in, yeah, we just got what we could get and made do, but if I had to do it all over again, I would have started with some more money. And that's actually a second lesson, or repeat lesson, kind of, when we bought our second venue, is that I would have taken more money again. But we were dealing with investors that didn't want to dilute their ownership in the second property like at all, and so convincing them to dilute it, and then at a certain point they didn't want to go past the threshold to dilute themselves. And so on the second deal, this one was different because we had the experience, we had industry know-how, but we were coming up on when all of the rates were climbing and banks had been lending through COVID so generously that now they were tightening the purse strings. And so the local lenders that we were trying to work with were giving us the runaround, they were extending the goalposts, and so it felt like a fight every single day to get anything done. And the lenders were no help, the local lenders that is. Um, we got a call at 5 p.m. or I got the call at 5 p.m. from the underwriter of the first bank that was like, yeah, we can do it, blah blah blah. I get a call from the underwriter whom I had been emailing and messaging and reaching out to all month long leading up to this. and saying, hey, what else do we need? What else do we need? What can we get you? We just want to make sure that we're good to go because our closing date is June 12th. And no response, nothing. The main banker that we had been talking with, she said, oh, we're good to go. Nothing's wrong. We have everything we need. And then at 5 o'clock, a week out from closing, on the day of our option period expiring, he gives me a call and says, we can't do this unless you provide all of your silent partners' tax returns for the last 2 years. And I was just like, are you kidding me? That's not, A, that's not possible. B, I'm not going to do that because there's a reason why they want to be silent partners, and you're looking for guarantors. So then I said, what number are you looking for? And he said, that's not how this works. I need all of their information. I said, well, that is how this works. You're looking for a specific number, so tell me what that is, and I can find the investors to match that. And so we eventually got, very long story there. We got the president involved of the bank and get the option period extended, and it's just this whole fight. And then we learned that that bank was actually over leveraged and they were just trying to pad their stats. So eventually they wound up asking in cash, collateral, and property. So the actual asset, the property, they wound up asking for like $5.7 million, and this was a $3 million deal. And so it was just insanity. So we go to the next local lender, and then his go-to default answer for 3 weeks was, oh man, the more I look at this, the more complicated it gets. And it was just because we had a number of guarantors who have multiple businesses, and they asked for the all of the tax information. And so but that was his response every single time. And he said, every time I look at this, I have more questions. And I said, ask your questions. We'd answer the questions, and then he'd ask the same questions. And so he clearly didn't want to do it. So we eventually found an SBA lender, and that's the one that actually wanted to get the deal done. But then we had our own headaches with them. Once we got through underwriting, it was the closing stuff, and then kind of like the first lender, when it came time to that, they were just asking for the same documents again and again and again. And I have like email threads from this individual from that lender, like 50 emails back and forth, and that's just one thread, and there's like 10 of those. So it's just insanity. And that's on the lending side. So on that piece, again, I wish I had brought in more investors and more capital so that I could avoid these types of situations. And really, that's the biggest lesson that I learned on that end. And then when I was evaluating the deal and doing the due diligence, the big thing that I was looking at was just the total number of bookings that they had, how much the value was there. But the unknown that I missed was, and that my whole team missed, was that part of the money received, those deposits, was actually payouts that were promised to other vendors because they were doing these all-inclusive packages. And so the information was there, but because I didn't know to look for it, since that's not what we do in our first venue, I missed it. And so the amount that we were expecting to get back, we got it. But then it was diluted because we're getting all these invoices from vendors. And so now we start paying out invoices to vendors, and it's just like, oh my gosh, what is going on? And so that was another big lesson. So the point in case here is learn from our mistakes. If you're going to buy a venue and you don't have, even if you do have experience, bring in more money than what, like, the bare minimum that you're trying to just get by with, because it's going to save you a ton of headaches on the banker side. And then when you're evaluating, doing the due diligence, and they have bookings that you're taking over, like more than just a small handful, then ask the question, how much of these deposits is promised to vendors? Are these all inclusives? Are you paying them out? Are they in-house? What is it? Just figure out how much of that cash is actually going to be yours and not someone else's. And so those are the two big lessons that I've learned to adjust and to fix going into the future. And so the rest of it, I'm happy that we got our second venue. I think it's very, very strong. We have already seen significant improvement in terms of the amount of bookings and all of that. Um, the final piece, the final lesson that I learned was actually staffing. And I think that if you're taking over a venue, so our first venue, there's no staff. It was just the owner running it. She was great and was a great, knowledgeable resource for us when we took over. But on the second one, there was staff in place because the owners were from out of state. And so when we initially met with the staff, they were just like, "Oh, the owners are been, non-existent. They just leave us to figure things out on our own. This and that, and the other." So we thought that the problem was solely resting on the shoulders of the owners. But then when we took over, come to find out, the problem was also on a few members of the staff, a few key members. And so I wish that I had interviewed them and recognized signs of poor performance from them and had been able to attribute part of that to them more fully. And so as we got going, I had my suspicions, which were eventually confirmed, and we had to let those individuals go. But had we been able to spot that sooner? And so the thing that I think about, and this is hypothetical right now because we haven't put it into practice because we're not looking at a third venue at this point in time, but the hypothetical for me is how can I avoid that mistake in the future? And so it goes beyond just being able to interview the staff, but the one thing that stood out in my mind is that the owners or the sellers, they had us basically agree not to talk to any of their clients. And so I didn't really think anything of it at the time, but looking back, I will never agree to that in the future because I need to be able to interview all of the customers, all of the clients, the past and present, and also I need to be able to be present at events so I can just shadow and see how things are being run because I know what I expect at our venues. And if I see that those things are not being done with the staff, and I need to do it anonymously so they can't know that it's me initially, and so I need an unbiased view of this. And so in the future, if I'm buying another venue, that's what it's going to take is I need to interview people who've done tours. I need to interview all of the current couples and past couples within a reasonable amount of time so that I can get a good gauge of how the staff is taking care of the business. And so those are, I guess, now three key lessons that I have learned in this whole process. And so if you're looking at buying a venue with or without experience, A, bring more money than you think is necessary. Just get the investors. There are plenty of ways to work the deal out so that you have control. You can have silent partners. That's actually what we did on our second deal. All the investors we brought on, in addition to our core group, were our silent partners, so they don't have a say in the day-to-day operations. But they're purely investors, so they're not guarantors, they're not on the loan, they're only at risk for what they put up. And so that's how we were able to work that out. So bring more money than you'd expect, or than the minimum. And then the second is make sure that will help you avoid banking issues. The second is make sure you understand who all is owed that money, who gets priority on the money of the deposits that are coming in, and if there's no events really like under 10 that you're taking over, then make sure you work out with your bank to get working capital, because it's going to take a year before you start cash flowing. And then the third one is, if there's staff in place, you need to do your due diligence on them. So interviewing clients, interviewing guests, going to the events to just see how they're being treated and everything like that. And that's what we'll do on the future ones as we look to add more to our portfolio. And so if you're looking for a venue, then those will save you so much headache and pain and fights with lenders and all of this and misunderstanding of the deal and all of that. So avoid our mistakes, make better deals, and I really hope that this helps somebody who's in that boat or who's thinking about it. That way you're able to just have a much better experience. But anyways, that's the lessons that I took away from our deals, and I hope that was useful to you. And I will end it here and catch you on the next one.